Hi, welcome to Fiction Writing for Writing 3. Yay! Today we are going to talk about quite a few things, so we're going to try to get through them fast. We're going to talk about, let me go back here, grammar and punctuation for fiction, point of view, show don't tell, dialogue, introduction to hero's journey, beginnings and middles. So we have a lot to get through, so I don't want to take too long. It might be a little longer than our class period would have been though, just a warning there. Okay, so let's start right away with grammar and punctuation for fiction. Okay, so the first one that people sometimes struggle with in this area is dialogue. And what we have with dialogue, when you're writing dialogue and you have a character, who can tell me how you are supposed to punctuate that? Okay, I'll just tell you. So say you have somebody saying, "Hi, my name is Joe."
Timothy.
What did you say?
Timothy?
Roosevelt.
Okay. So, hi, my name, can we see this?
Yes.
Is Jimothy. Okay, so what do we do here? What kind of punctuation do we need?
Oh, you need quotation marks, right?
Let's do said.
Oh my gosh.
Said Mary. Okay? So we need quotation marks. So where do the quotation marks go? Christian?
Between, in front of hi and after Jimothy.
Okay. And then I did that wrong. Shoot. Actually, you said Mary said instead of said Mary. Okay? That's a good point. Okay, now what else does this need? Christian?
It needs punctuation after Jimothy.
What?
It needs a period.
No, it needs a comma. Okay? So when you have dialogue, you have a quotation mark before, quotation mark after the comma, okay? And then when it's a said, like Mary said, or replied, or our cat just jumped on our thing, or anything like that, replied, said, commented, something like that, then you do a comma and then the tag. This is called a tag. Okay? Okay? And then what if you had somebody said, "Hi, Jimothy. Nice to meet you." Do I put it right here, Christian?
No.
No. Good. You would put it down on its own paragraph. Okay? Nice to meet you. Okay? So each line of dialogue gets its own paragraph. You see, this is a paragraph, that means paragraph, and this is a paragraph. Okay? So when you have saids, commented, replied, things like that, you have a comma at the end. So maybe you had somebody here say, "Nice to meet you, Mary, Jimothy," I'll just say J, replied. Okay, you have a comma. Okay? Got that? I don't have as big of a board here, so I'm going to have to erase.
No.
Okay? Okay, now, what if you have something where it says, "You are pretty," and then the person does something, okay? So then you would have, Jimothy blushed. How's that? You are pretty. Jimothy blushed. What goes here? Christian? Or-
Comma.
Are you sure?
Period.
Period. Okay. Wow. So this. Let's see if I can get that color. Well, I don't know if you can tell.
We're red.
This right here, something like this, is called an action beat. You see that? Okay. So if the person that's talking has an action, that's called an action beat. And instead of a comma, you put a period. Okay? So, thanks. Mary replied. Okay? So if it's replied, that's called a tag, remember? Replied, said, asked, things like that, you do a comma. If it's a beat, an action beat, you are pretty. Joshua, what is his name? Jay, I forgot his name.
Jimothy.
Jay blushed.
Jimothy.
Or Jay rolled his eyes, right? Like my teenagers. Or
Oh.
Jay stood up. Any kind of action beat like that would be a period. Okay? So, and then the other thing is, which most people don't do this very often, but if you want to say, Jay said, and then have the quote, you do it with a comma, and same thing. You could say Jay burped. Okay, and then do a period. Okay. And let's see. Another thing about dialogue, about grammar and punctuation for dialogue, is that in old books you may have noticed that it might say like, oh, Aslan, said Lucy, right? But in modern day rules, they don't want you to do it that way. They want you to do it, Lucy said. So the person talking always comes before the said or replied or anything like that. Even though in all the old books that we read, they do it this way, the way we write now is to put it first. Okay. All right, keep going with grammar. Isn't this fun? Don't you love grammar? I do. I got that. Oh, okay, so when you're writing a thought, like your character has a thought, the old-fashioned way would be to say, let's stick with Jimothy, we'll call him Jim, thought, this is nuts.
Oh.
But nowadays, they don't want that. They want the thinking to be in italics. Okay? Everything else is punctuated the same, but instead of the quotes, if it's a thought, you would put it in italics. Okay? Yes?
What are italics?
Italics?
Yeah.
So instead of like that, it's more like leaning over.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's what that means. This is nuts. Okay, and finally, last grammar thing. Just a review. This isn't necessarily for fiction, but I've noticed it in some of your writing. Is compound verbs. Compound verbs. So I wrote an example in my notes. It says, Mary drove to Starbucks oops, and bought a latte. I actually put mocha frappuccino, but you know, it's just too long to write. Mary drove to Starbucks and bought a latte. Something's wrong with this sentence. What's wrong with this? Abigail?
No.
We have somebody watching our class who's not in our class.
That's true.
Christian, do you know?
No.
I wonder if Gabby knows.
I don't know.
Do you know what's wrong with the sentence?
Mary drove to Starbucks. Why
Oh.
is there a comma?
Yes.
I was gonna
good.
say that. I
There
just
should not be a comma here. Okay? This is in Jensen's, one of the first lessons actually. Why? Because let's really fast. You know what I'm gonna do?
Oh yes.
My kids know.
She does this a lot.
What am I gonna do? Diagram.
Yes,
Okay.
diagram.
So Mary, what is the verb?
Drove.
And
Bought.
yes. Okay.
And
Drove to Starbucks and bought okay, so it's a compound verb. It's not a kind. So with a compound verb, you do not use a comma. Okay, no comma. Okay, Mary drove to Starbucks and bought a latte. Now, what if I did this? Okay, so we're deciding that that was a compound verb, and so it did not use a comma. But what if I do this? Mary drove to Starbucks, and she. Then do I need a comma? Yes.
Yes. I knew that.
Right here. Because, do you know why?
Is it because it's a independent and a dependent? No, independent. What?
Did you say independent?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay. So this is
This is like what? I got it right.
okay. So this is
That's probably the first
independent
time.
clause. Independent clause. Independent clause. Okay. This is independent. This red pen doesn't work. Okay.
But
Two
wait.
independent clauses separated by a
Coordinating conjunction.
coordinating conjunction does get a comma. Okay.
You should all know.
You should remember that. So
So
the
too, and I know.
The thing that makes it an independent clause is that it has a subject and a verb. It can stand alone. Okay?
Yes.
Oh, yay. Okay, I think we finished our, we finished talking about grammar and punctuation. Okay? And now, can you move your elbow off the table, please, and put it on your lap? Is point of view. Okay? Point. This is very important for fiction, okay? If I was in class with you, we would have a discussion about it. But can anybody in my little classroom tell me what point of view means?
Is it like the point, or like in the shoes of the person who is, you know?
Exactly. The
Yeah.
main character.
Yeah.
You're in that
Oh,
person's mind. Yes?
Is it like first person and or second person and third person and
Right.
Fourth person, fifth person, sixth person.
Right. So you have, yes, that is part of it. The main thing is that you're telling the story through the main character's point of view, through their mind. You're in their head, okay? So you are the character. You're not the narrator. You're not the author. You are the character. And even if it's third person, if you're saying she or something like that, you're still only showing what that character can see, touch, or feel, or do. You don't all of a sudden go away from it and start acting like you're like over it all and be able to see it all, because all you can do is what from that one character's point of view. If you think about Edmund and the White Witch, okay, when you're there, you're seeing the White Witch and the wolves, or what was it that pulled her sleigh? It was all in what Edmund was seeing, right? And then C.S. Lewis would change point of view, and there'd be times like when you were with Lucy, with Mr. Tumnus, and you're seeing that all through what Lucy could see. So point of view is very important, because if you mess that up, then it just gets really confusing to the to the readers, and it makes it difficult to understand what's going on in your story. You lose interest, it gets boring. I once heard a famous author say, or I read that he said, the one thing that made him become a profound, famous author was nailing point of view. So just getting that into that one character, really understanding who that is very important. So for what we're doing, I prefer only one point of view character. If you're going to do 2 point of view characters, you need to keep it one scene per point of view. So don't switch point of views within the scene, okay? All right, moving on to show, don't tell. Woohoo! Show, who knows what this means? Abigail?
Does it mean that you need to like describe things and not like say like, you're supposed to say like, oh, the leaves are so green and colorful, instead of the leaves?
Instead of it's fall.
It's fall, right?
Yeah.
Good. Instead of it's fall, you describe the fall.
Yes.
That's a very good example. Or maybe,
Oh, can I do it?
it's snowing. You could say, go.
Or the white snow falls from the clouds into their home.
Covering their
Covering-
Vast empire of destruction.
There you go. Okay, that's a good
Stupid
example.
truck dudes.
Another good example is she felt sad, right?
Or-
what is that? Is that telling or showing?
Telling.
Okay, let's let Christian.
She felt so horrible and disgusting after the death of her husband.
That's still
And she
telling.
was
Yeah.
really sad.
Still,
Can I try?
that's still telling. That's still telling. She
Okay.
felt so.
Can I try?
So just a second. So using the word felt is kind of like a ding ding ding, a red flag that it is
Aw.
telling. It's almost always telling if you use the word felt. Yes.
The I had one, but then I forgot it.
Okay, I got one. As she stared at the grade on the corner of her Spanish test, her throat tightened. Tears threatened to flow, but the bully Duke sat at the desk next to her. No way could she cry in front of him, yet she had studied so hard for the test. Would she never get anything right? Okay, so I showed sadness without saying, I never said she was sad. I never said the word sad, right? Does that make sense? Do you guys want to try another one?
Yes, they're fun.
One more. How about, I've got an optional.
Okay.
The cute kitty made her happy,
Bip.
or the warrior was mad.
The word mad.
Let's go.
Okay. After the treacherous acts of his brother, the warrior threw himself into a fury and slaughtered thousands of unarmed peasants.
There you go. That reminds me of Star Wars. Of Anakin Skywalker. Yeah.
Yeah, when he gives all the younglings.
Yeah, remember that? Yeah. Okay, good. That's exactly right. Very good.
Can I do the one with the kid?
No, I think we need to move on. You guys get the idea. You guys can do the kitty at home.
But the
if you want
kitty,
to.
the cute. What?
I know
we're at
some
home,
now
so
in
I
my
don't
class would
lie.
like to do the kitty.
Like the brown.
Oh, actually, they're not in my class right.
If
Okay.
only the kids
Yeah.
Okay,
had,
now moving on.
had sand, they could have stopped.
I know that we talked about dialogue, punctuation, but I just really quickly want to mention dialogue as far as writing good dialogue.
Oh
And I
boy.
just have 3 quick points about that. I know, this is getting long. Number 1 point is that it moves the plot forward, okay? Everything in your story should always move the plot forward, okay? You don't want to just have random dialogue that's just has no point. Everything in your story is always pushing it to the next thing that's going to happen. That's why you make the plot charts and stuff ahead of time, so you know where your story is going. So if this is your scene, your dialogue is helping you move toward the climax of the scene. Okay? And the second one is it has conflict. A lot of people don't, especially new writers, including myself when I was a new writer, didn't know that it's really good, as much as you can, to have conflict in your writing. It can be macro or micro, so it can be a big, huge thing going on, like a big fight or something like that, or just a little bit of arguing, just like
Christian, you're mean,
or disagreeing. Like I think we should go over that path, and the other person says. So a boring scene, a boring dialogue, right, would be, I think we should go on that path. And everybody with them says, okay, right, that's boring, right? but it's more interesting if, like, maybe Frodo says, let's go on that path, right? And then Legolas says, no, we should go on this path, you know? And they fight over it. Although I don't think Legolas would fight like that.
It has to be realistic, though. Don't make it them fight if it's not in their character, just for the sake of having a fight.
Right, that brought up a good point, that Legolas probably wouldn't fight like that. I should have thought of maybe, what's the dwarf's name?
Gimli.
Gimli, right?
Gimli?
Gimli?
Grimbly.
Well, how about Edmund? Edmund and Peter, right? They always have that conflict. You see that, and that does make it a lot more interesting, okay? And then the third one is that... meanders? I don't know how to explain this except that our dialogue when we talk to each other is usually kind of, it's not like a straight line, okay? How about if we do this? It doesn't start A and end up B. And you want to have a goal for your dialogue, but it's kind of good if it meanders a little bit, right? Or maybe this person interrupts themselves. Or different things happen when you're talking, and you might stop and start again, or you might get distracted by something. And so good dialogue kind of does that. It's not super perfectly linear. Okay, so there's my 3 points about dialogue. Thank you, thank you. And we're getting close to being done. We're going to talk about beginnings, okay, and the hero's journey. Woohoo! This is a little bit longer, actually, but we'll go fast. You guys know about the hero's journey?
Yeah.
My kids know
I'm just
about it.
thinking about the book with Hero. What is it called?
No, never mind.
I'm thinking about.
I know, we know.
Okay, so the hero's journey is a very ancient method of writing stories, telling stories that started long, long ago. It was really came to be known in like the 1900s, where people started, it became popular to follow the format of the hero's journey. And
Action.
okay, so talking about hero's journey, basically what it is a series of events that happen in an arc. So for beginnings, I'm just going to talk about beginnings and middles today. For beginnings, it starts with the ordinary world. I think I talked about this a little bit before. Okay, you have your ordinary world. So what does that mean, do you think? Christian, what do you think? Abby?
Is it kind of like I forgot what it's called, the beginning story chart, like where everything's normal and before the journey has started?
Mm-hmm. It's like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you think of an example of it from a book or a movie or something?
The Shire.
The Shire. The Shire is the perfect example of ordinary world. Okay. So you have your character in their normal place before they go on their adventure. The thing that they can either be one or two things. So ordinary world can be like a beautiful, happy place, like the Shire, or it can be like a messed up, hard place that they need to get out of. Okay. Can you think of an example of that?
What? Oh,
Abigail?
in Percy Jackson.
Tell me about that.
Well, in Percy Jackson, he's just, oof, it's rough.
But that doesn't. Basically, he has an abusive father and
Abusive
Stepfather.
stepfather.
Oh, yeah.
And his mom is like really
It's
having a rough
they're
life in New
poor.
York.
It's a bitter situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
He loves.
It's rough.
And they're poor.
And then they're dead.
So there you go. That's an example. Another example, maybe like Cinderella, right? She was
Ooh, yes.
in a bad situation at the beginning of the story. Okay? So that's your beginning, is the ordinary world. And then the next thing that happens is one of my favorite things. Does you guys know?
Isn't it like denial of the call?
No?
It's the
Rising
call.
up.
Call first, right? It's called the call. The call. And that is it's called the call to adventure. Is
What
it's
about
officially called.
Bridge?
Shh, Abby. The call to adventure. Okay? And that is where the person is in their ordinary world and something happens to say, you can't stay in this ordinary world anymore. You've got to get out of here and go do something. And it's often a mentor who does the calling. Okay? And an example, what's an example? Can you say- Gandalf comes to Bilbo and says, you got to go get the ring. That's an example. Obi-Wan Kenobi tells Luke Skywalker that he has to come fight, like your father in the Clone Wars, right? Like your father did in the Clone Wars. Come join the Rebel Army and join us, right? It can be lots of different things, so it doesn't always have to be a mentor. It can be, if you start watching movies and reading your books, you'll see there's tons of different ways that there are calls to adventure. There's so many different things. I watched this one movie once where they had a cookie, they were in a cookie shop, and this one guy was a health inspector, and he was not allowed to eat any of the food in any of the places that he was inspecting. And this girl that it was his love interest owned the cookie shop, and she's like, eat the cookie. Eat the cookie. and that was his call to adventure, but he couldn't get himself to eat that cookie and get, break free from his kind of ruled world and type of thing. And that was his call to adventure.
rough.
So it can be lots of different
That's
things.
really weird.
It was kind of weird, but I liked it. So the next one is what, Christian?
Denial of the call.
Refusal. Refusal.
I can call whatever I want.
Except for they mean different things.
Okay, so these need to be, we're still going up here. Refusal of the call is like the guy who couldn't eat that cookie. He's like, I can't eat that cookie. I won't eat it. I'm not going to eat that cookie. Or Luke Skywalker saying, no, I can't go with you. I have to stay here on my aunt's water farm. I can't go. Or, Bilbo, no way was he going to go, right? So almost always a refusal of the call. If you watch, it's happened so much in a romance. They'll be like,
I can't go with you.
I love you. Sometimes a refusal of the call is almost the whole story in a romance, but that's a different type of
That's
thing.
so sad.
But there is an exception. If the person does not refuse the call, that usually means that they fail their mission. If they're all gung-ho and they want to go do it, usually means that they're being too impetuous, maybe they're being selfish. For whatever reason, they fail their mission.
Oh, so I don't need a refusal of the cause?
If you make
my
them lose?
story?
Yeah, you wouldn't.
I wouldn't.
Right.
Because I was thinking how
You should
I
go
would
off
do
and
it.
do it without that. Yeah, that's good,
Yeah.
Christian, yeah. Okay, so the last one that's part of the beginnings is crossing the first threshold.
Bridge?
No,
Not yet.
first Should try and write a little neater. Oh, how do you spell threshold?
Do you not know?
I'm like doubting myself. Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, crossing the first threshold. So this is when they accept the call and they go through the door. There's oftentimes an actual door, or like a gate or an arch. They walk through an arch, some kind of thing in the wilderness that they walk
Or a
through.
bridge.
Or a
Or
thing that's
not
like
a bridge, Abby.
like a sword they have to walk on.
A sword they have to walk on. That's
Wait,
a
what?
good one. Some kind of thing where it's saying, okay, they are taking that step into their journey, leaving their ordinary world, crossing into the new world, and the new adventure is about to begin.
I think most of the times that it's a physical door is in like fantasy stuff, and in more real stuff I feel like usually it's more symbolic.
Actually, you see it doors in even like movies and stuff. You see it
Like
in
what?
modern movies. Well, now I can't think of an example, but when I'm watching them, I'm always like, oh, there's a door. They're walking through the door. It just seems to happen. Not always. Not always. I'll point one out to you.
Like in the West Side over when the Puerto
In what?
Ricos walk into,
I'm talking about in
Oh,
books.
West Side Story?
yeah, when, I forgot, never mind.
I don't remember, but you probably are right. Usually there is some kind of a door, or a lot of times there is. There's not always. Okay, so that's your beginnings, which I know you already wrote, but as you're editing, you can keep these things in mind. And then for middles. Middles is actually faster.
Oh, good.
Phew, I know. Okay.
So you're not gonna go over the full hero story?
Not yet. I'll go over the rest of it
I
next
wish I
time.
was in your
Just-
class.
Okay, so now we'll do, I'm not gonna write middles because I'm gonna write that one. So a problem with middles, they call it sagging middles, which applies to middle-aged people. We have sagging middles. And also,
You're old. You're so old.
So people who are younger than you.
I'm gonna watch this video.
You're so old.
Shh, Christian. Okay, so here's the beginning down here. Okay, so now we're into the middle. This is the first threshold. Say, I'll make a little door. Okay, the main thing that happens here as you're going toward the climax is called tests, allies, enemies. Tests, allies, enemies. Okay, so we are talking about middles now. And this is your beginning down here. This is your crossing the first threshold. And the main thing that happens in the middle is tests, allies, enemies. Okay, so when you were thinking about your story and you were thinking about the obstacles that they had to overcome, that's when these happen. Okay, so what's an example from a story?
With obstacles in between the beginning
Like
and
of an
time.
obstacle. Let's think of an obstacle.
I guess like the mountain pass in Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Yeah, walk through super dangerous.
That would be an obstacle. And then, what's an ally? Think of an ally. Maybe in the Lord of the Rings.
An ally in Lord of the Rings would be like the elf people.
The elves. Legolas.
Yeah.
Legolas
I don't know.
is actually an ally that comes along. He's not there at the beginning, right? They kind of gather their allies as they go.
Yeah,
Same with Strider, right? He's an ally. Or the beavers, right, in Narnia. Or even Mr. Tumnus. But he ends up kind of being a shapeshifter, which he changes. We think he's good, and then he's not good. As he gives, and then, he tells the White Witch, but then he turns out being good in the end, right? So, and then enemies. What are some enemies that come in the Lord of the Rings?
All of the orcs, the orci.
The orcs, and of course all the cool ring wraiths and all those things.
It's so cool.
As you're going through this part, you kind of just play with these different things happening. And you want to have some of each one. And this is important right now. Listen. it should be right. It's called rising action, right? So you want each thing that happens during the middle to be more intense than the one before, okay? So at the beginning, it's an easy obstacle to get past. And then it's a more intense obstacle, and then it's more intense and more intense. And there can be some breaks, like with the allies, right? Maybe the beavers, you remember, that was a nice little break. Oh, they're so fun, and that's so cool. But then we have to hurry up and get out of there because they're coming after us. So it can be a little bit of a break, but it's still toward more and more suspense, more and more intensity, so that when you get to the climax, can you sit down, please?
Okay.
That you're just like ready for that climax. So it's like you're just bursting to get ready to have that happen, right? And that gets rid of your sagging middles. And the important thing too about the middle, which I put in your notes, which you probably saw, was that the end of this part, it's your middle seam, there's no hope, okay? So everything's happening, and then everything just falls apart, okay? In the middle, everything just falls right apart. There's no hope. The enemy seems like the enemy's going to win. Aslan is dead, okay? That's it. It's over. There's no hope whatsoever, okay? And that's how it should feel. That feeling of like, what are we going to do? Aslan is dead. There's no hope, right? That feeling should happen right at the end of that scene. So that's your middles.
So it should happen right before the climax?
Right before the climax. Yep. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, you guys are welcome to call me or email me, message me, whatever you want to do. I will try. If you want to email me your next assignments, you're welcome to do that, and I like that. We can do that. I can take care of that through email. That's totally fine. If you want to wait till the next class, that's fine too. Whatever you want to do. But thank you, and I hope you have a good rest of your break.